Welcome back to TLT Talks. We have a very exciting show for you today. One of Compass's finest will be joining us. I'm going to give her a second to jump on. In the meantime, I decided to get out of New York for a minute. Look at that. At this undisclosed location. Gorgeous. Still up and running, still fully functional, but just needed some sun. Sometimes you just need a little bit of sun. Anyone that's joining us, how's the weather in New York? I'm hearing it's kind of nuts. Hearing it's raining or something. Hello, Nancy from Williamsburg. Iggy, how you doing? Here we go. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome. Rainy and cold. Oh, sorry to hear that. Please help me welcome 3, 2, 1. There she is.
Hey, Eugene, how are you?
There she is. Kristen, how is it going?
Going well, thank you. I hope everybody is making it through these very unusual times, wherever you are. You can see I'm here in New York in the rain. I'm like Eugene.
Listen, you got to help me with something. Pants Clooney. What? That's an interesting. we just connected. I'm like, I got before we even jump into the show, I got to ask about Pants Clooney. What's Pants Clooney?
It's actually an old joke from business school. I'm embarrassed to tell you, and it's not like as racy as it sounds. So
I might. Maybe she's a big George Clooney fan. Cool. We don't judge here. It's all good.
Well, that's part of it. That's part of it.
Cool. Cool. Well, welcome.
10 years ago, George Clooney.
I love it. I love it. Well, welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take a minute to introduce Kristen, who is CFO of Compass. It would take me literally the entire show to rattle off her resume, but 20 years of global experience, a BA in Columbia, an MBA in Harvard, Goldman Sachs, Carlyle Group, on and on and on. I'm happy to let her share a little bit of her background, but truly a brilliant mind when it comes to one of the very important functions of any business, and that is its money. It's keeping of its money, the projections of its money. Everything having to do with the financial part of the business in one way or another. It ties back to Kristen. And when you talk about something that's multi-billion dollars, it's really impressive. So to run that whole operation, I love numbers newly as of the last few years. So this for me, I feel like a kid in a candy store. I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can learn as well. But Kristen, why don't you take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, how you got here, anything you want to share. We're all excited to learn about you.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your kind words and your passion for the financial elements of our business.
Doesn't everybody love numbers?
Yeah. Well, here at Compass, we should, because this company is delivering amazing results. Yeah. So I actually grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, right outside of D.C. in Virginia, so Northern Virginia. I grew up really always loving New York, always had a passion for visiting New York. And we used to come up to New York, multiple times a year as a family, go see Broadway shows and, that kind of thing. And so I always wanted to come to New York. And when I went to college at Columbia, that was my opportunity to move to New York. So I've been living in New York for a long time. That was in 1996 that I came to New York, and was here for college, and then decided to go into investment banking. And the reason I did that was and I went to work at Goldman Sachs. And I really wanted to do that because I was very interested in business. My parents were both entrepreneurs. And the talk around my dinner table when I was growing up was always around their business. And so like many of you who I know every day are slugging it out there, my parents were doing the same. And I really enjoyed hearing how they thought about how they thought about their businesses. And, we celebrated the wins together as a family, and, there were tough times as well. And so we were all sort of in it together. And so the reason I went into investment banking is I thought that would be a great way to get a fundamental business education without, and really preserve a lot of options, because I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go in. And I ended up working in our technology team at Goldman. So I've had a passion for technology for a long time. I went to a magnet school for science and technology. So I've been like a numbers geek for a long, long time. So I ended up working focused on the technology space, ultimately ended up deciding to become an investor. I thought it was really, when you're a banker, you're sort of parachuted in to do a deal, and then you sort of parachute out. And it's like, it's actually was sort of hard, because, you meet these people, form these relationships with these companies, sort of help them with their strategy, help them with an M&A deal or a large capital raise, and then you sort of pull out and not really get to see the results of the work. Did the vision ultimately pan out? And so when I moved to the investment side, I moved into a type of investing called private equity, which generally means that we're buying businesses, we hold them for 3 to 5 years, and then we would sell them. And so there was an opportunity to meet a management team, make an investment, stick with that company as a partner, help them do great things, help them grow their business over the course of 3 or 5 years, and then ultimately, sort of recoup the investment. And move on to do that all over again with somebody else. And so that's really what I spent the bulk of my career doing, really for 20 years, working with companies, working with management teams to help them grow their businesses. And I worked in companies of all sizes, some small, some very big. Very few of them are as big as Compass, but some of them were as big as Compass. International companies, and companies that were very active in the technology space, in the media space. Really, I loved it. I had a great time doing it. It was incredibly energizing, met a lot of people, learned a lot. And it was really in the context of exploring new businesses that I first came across Compass. So I was covering the real estate sector within the software space, ultimately ended up meeting Robert and the broader team, more with my investor hat on. When you are an investor and you have the opportunity to meet somebody who's disrupting a segment of the economy as big as residential real estate, you never turn that opportunity down. So I had an opportunity to meet the team, and thought it was a very interesting investment opportunity. But was actually surprised myself by being really excited about the possibility of maybe joining the team and helping them to deliver for an incredible mission for agents and for our agents' clients alike. And so that's what originally brought me to Compass. Little known fact, I live about 4 blocks away from our headquarters at 95th Avenue.
Don't tell anybody that.
Prior to coming to Compass, I was living in Palo Alto. And so, I went from having sort of a 3,000-mile commute to a, 3 or 4 block commute. And that works better for me and my husband. So it worked out.
Don't tell anybody how close you are to Compass. It's like
I know.
It's like the Cardinal.
Trust me.
I live in New Jersey. I live in Connecticut.
Smart. Exactly.
Well, that sounds incredible. What a journey. And here you are today. It's actually really, you're a breath of fresh air, because over the last 10 weeks or so, we've been interviewing lots of Compass leadership, and most of them had been here for 6, 7, 8 years. And, I think with every company, new is good, right? And so having a fresh outlook, someone that hasn't been here forever, that's kind of patterned in so the way things are, but, a fresh outlook, things of that nature is really great. So with that, actually, I'd love to draw on some of your wisdom from your entire career, but obviously this year as well, because this year has been very interesting, to say the least. So in hindsight, COVID happens, right? And it's not like COVID, now in hindsight, we say COVID happens, but during COVID was happening, and you didn't know what tomorrow looked like at any point in time. You didn't know there would be a shutdown or not. When there was a shutdown, you didn't know for how long. There was all these different things. So, I had a whole bunch of things I was doing in modeling, whatever, budgeting, whatever, just to figure out like what we're going to do. I guess I'm doing it for, and you're doing it for billions of dollars. So my, what I love to ask is, in hindsight, what were some of the really great moves you guys made in the way of, the CFO branch? And then equally in hindsight, what are some of the things that now, go to the experience bucket where it's a cool, we did that. In hindsight, had we done that? And for the next, whenever this happens, which, listen, right now, the way things are looking out there, maybe civil wars, like who knows what the next thing is. But this, COVID and the disruption of business is not the last thing ever that's going to disrupt business. So in hindsight, what were some of the great moves, things you'd model in the future? What were some of the things that could have been done better? And what are those learns? And any way you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So this, so let's all level set here. This was something, the last time it happened was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So we literally have nobody who is very, very, nobody who was sort of actively managing a business in 1918 is actively managing a business in 2020. Look, I think I know your business. I know your question is really focused on the business, and I of course have a business answer to that. But I would say, look, personally, it all became very real very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was a personal, these are all, I don't make the decisions single-handedly. I have a whole team of people who are helping me to make sure that we all have the information we need to be responsible. And so, it was catching all of us, it was much more dramatic, much more quickly than we expected. So I think, going into any kind of situation where there's some uncertainty and sort of a shock to the system, you have to first ask yourself, what can I control and what can I not control?
Right.
And what was unclear is what is the future, what was the future revenue for the business, and what is, how long is this all going to last? And so we're fortunate because we have a number of experts around the company who had a perspective and a view that wasn't informed necessarily by exactly this, but was informed by, let's say, a national situation like the financial crisis in 2008, or even September 11th, which the near-term impacts were really more limited to New York. But there were other situations that we could look to sort of help us get smarter on how things might pan out, and of course, a bunch of industry experts out there speculating. So it was clear that in a world where you're not sure exactly what the revenue projection is going to look like, the thing to focus on is the costs, right? And how do we think about, how do we think about the cost side of the equation? And so we spent a lot of time there, really focused on initially sort of what is the cost position of the business in a world where maybe we don't have people going into the offices for a month, right? At first, it seemed like it could be 2 weeks, maybe a month. Quickly, it became clear that it was going to be longer than that. But really, sort of understanding what are the expenses that we could control, what are the expenses that we couldn't control, and how do we make sure that we're not just making decisions that position the company appropriately for the next month or two, but really with the longer term view. Because at its core, we're not here to serve ourselves, and we're not, we're here to, of course, make sure that our investors see a good return, but ultimately day to day and over the long term, we're here for our customers. And we were really trying to figure out, how can we ensure that we are managing our expenses in a way that allows us to drive the benefits and address the needs of our customers, who we knew were also in a very similar boat, sort of saying, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And so that's really where we focused, really making sure that we were putting ourselves in the right kind of capital position that would allow us to continue to deliver for our customers over time. I think we did a good job moving fast in terms of some of the changes we needed to make. We of course did make some very difficult decisions around, making some changes to our employee base. I have to tell you, like, personally, that was probably the worst professional day of my career. I do think that we did some things very, very, very right there to really do what was responsible for the business and ultimately responsible for our customers. And so I feel really good about, our ability to sort of move fast, consistent with our entrepreneurship principles, which I know you probably live by too, Eugene. And really focusing on solutions and focusing on delivering, really transforming our platform for one that had delivered for customers in a particular way to one that delivered in a different way, really focusing on our tech platform, really being able to deliver for our agents the tools that they would need, the information that they would need to provide to their customers to ultimately enable their clients to continue to transact in this environment. That's really, what we focused on. What I wish we had done differently is, I have to say, the rebound came back faster than I and I think a whole lot of other people expected. And so we, I think, have been really working to ensure that we could support the high level of transactions that we're seeing both at Compass and across the industry. And so I wish that I could have foreseen that, but absent a crystal ball, I'm not sure we could have done a lot better. But I feel really good about where
That's
we
amazing.
ended up. And look, record revenue months in June, July, August, September, and potentially, going into this month. It's been incredible to see the rebound and really the bounce back with passion that I've seen across our agents, across our employees, and really across the country, because this has been a really hard time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's ultimately the scoreboard, right? The scoreboard of any financial move is what's the bottom line look like. And so if we're having record months, I mean, sure, there's always tweaks that could have been done differently. Look, that's really reassuring. We did a lot of the same. I mean, if I can very really oversimplify what you said, it's like, you got to get lean. You just got to get lean. You got to get lean on the expenses. So we kind of do the same thing. I do business coaching with Keith Cunningham, who's I think pretty brilliant. And one of our regular conversations together are what are some of the assumptions you're making that could be deadly. In fighting, they say that the shot you see coming, that's not the one that knocks you down. It's the one you don't see coming. That's the one that puts your lights out. So often, we're playing in my boardroom with my business coaching and the other CEOs. We're playing defense for each other. It's like, what are the assumptions you're making, like, that you're not seeing? What's in your blind spot? And one question he had asked me was, have you run a model? Because we have, Sarah and I, who's watching this, Sarah Katz, she runs operations and marketing for us, but she's also like head of finance. We have a kind of like, she's a Jill of all trades. And, we have all of our projections. Hey, we know, like, even if things get stuck for 3 months, we got all these commissions coming in, so we're fine. We could withstand the storm. I went to my staff and I guaranteed them 90 days, no layoffs, no whatever. But he's like, what have you run a model on the assumption that nobody will pay you? I was like, what do you mean nobody would pay me? He said, well, look, what if the landlords are not collecting rent and they can't pay the OPs? What if every sale deal you have in contract falls apart? What if the prices bottom out so fast that all the buyers feel it's not worth materializing the deal and they back out? And what if this chunk of money that you're expecting over the next 90 days disappears? What would you do then? And I'm like, looks like I got some homework to do. And what we did was we went away and we ran like 4 different models, a best case, an okay case, a worst case, and a worst case, depending on what would happen. And in each one of those cases, which levers would we pull, which expenses would we eliminate, what would we do? And all that work made it very easy to drive. And then obviously that, worst case scenario didn't come true, thank God. Everybody did pay and everybody, it was all good. But that allowed us to take a look at the business through a different lens, really get it lean. And even though all the commissions were coming in, we had to realize, oh man, there's like 20-30% here that we're spending right now that we don't really need to be spending. And so then we had a similar result, whereas, the profit was okay. And then the bounce back, I totally agree with you. We got stretched way too thin so fast, like overnight almost. And we had to hire 6 agents, which may not sound like a lot on a Compass level, but to us, we went from 12 to 18, like in less than 30 days, which, as you know, is like not smooth. It comes with a lot of bumps in the road. But yeah, the bounce back, I totally agree with everything. I think we did a really good job reacting. I think we could have been clear on the bounce back, but the truth is, I don't think anyone could have seen the bounce back this fast. And had, let's say, Compass and myself optimized for that bounce back, that looks like resources. That looks like we should hire people, spend money, whatever. And if that bounce back didn't happen, or if we continue to go in the same direction, that would have been a real bonehead move. And I don't think anyone could see that coming. So very cool. Very, very cool. All right. Well, I want to be really respectful of your time. I promise to get you out no later than 12:35. So I want to move on to financial models, right? So for anyone that's in business for themselves, they probably have their three primary documents, right? Their P&L, their cash flow, their balance sheet. Probably they have a budget, but not everyone. So many entrepreneurs, myself included, prior to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where I really got serious about learning all these things. Most entrepreneurs judge or measure the level of their success by how much is in the checking account of their bank. Oh, cool, we have X amount of dollars, we're okay, or like, oh shit, and so on and so forth. Obviously, we know that that's probably not the ill-advised way. Actually, I ran a business seminar recently, and I was just sharing some of my knowledge about financials and goal setting and whatnot. And I'm like, raise your hand if this happens to you regularly. April comes around, you get your tax bill, and you're like, oh shit, I don't have that money anymore. Like, raise your hand if that was me for many years. So look, if you're a business that currently has none of these things and you're running it based on, a checking account, or if you're a business that has these things in place, let's call A is like brand new, I don't do anything. B is I have my financial models, I've got a budget, whichever one you are. Let's start with A. If you're nowhere, then everything I'm talking about in B sounds really overwhelming, like it was for me in the beginning. How do I, if I'm A and I'm nowhere now, how do I just lift anchor, move the needle forward just a little bit, right? Like, what's the first thing to do? Very elementary. Like, what's the first couple of things to do to get myself moving towards some kind of optics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some deeper sort of understanding of the
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's people who are looking at the checking account, that's all they're doing. I think there's also people who look at the revenue coming in and are sort of like, okay, good, but they sort of forget about the expense side.
That's right.
And really being able to think the secret to all of this is sort of planning, right? In the advanced class is the scenario planning that you talked about a moment ago, but maybe you just start with an outlook for the next 6 months where you really sort of think about typically what are the number of units that I'm selling or transacting in one form or the other, and what is the sort of average selling price associated with those, and how does that translate into revenue for myself, right? So even if you look at it over the next 3 months or the next 6 months, which admittedly right now is sort of a tall order,
Yeah.
but if you plan that for yourself, and really have a sense as to the revenue coming in, and then looking at the expense base, right? And really having a planning out and itemizing and forcing yourself to really lay out the complete view of your expenses in a way that's very honest. Not in a way that's sort of your idealized view or, hey, generally I think of my expenses as X number, but you really list it out in an Excel spreadsheet, most fundamentally, and really be honest with yourself about, what those expenses are and what they look like on a run rate, that will certainly help you to isolate your profit, right? And the profit is ultimately the money that you have to, continue to run the business. A lot of times people forget about the cash flow piece, which I think maybe goes to your point around the cash, the tax bill that people are sort of surprised by in April, and I think really understanding also how that profit translates into cash. But the most fundamental thing to do is to just say, hey, if I'm going to use units and ASPs and turn that into a revenue number, and then understand of my expenses, which of these expenses do I pay every single month, regardless of what happens?
Right.
So your fixed costs, and which of these expenses do I pay only when there's a big transaction, right?
Right.
And so, and those would be variable costs. And so that will help you to understand, what is the fixed expense base you have to cover every single month, no matter what happens. And then what are the other expenses that you have to pay only when you actually transact? And being able to do that very simply and very honestly in an Excel spreadsheet, I think is even hard for people to do in terms of their personal finances.
That's
but
right.
for your business, it's even more critical, because obviously for many of us, that's what feeds into our personal P&Ls.
Right.
I think the advanced class,
well, hang on. Let me button up the elementary class first.
Oh,
That was
sure.
really good. Really good. So this I don't even know what to call it. Podcast, I don't know, whatever. The podcast gets circulated to over 100,000 people. About 40,000 of those are agents. So for all the agents out there, what that might look like is if you have an assistant, if you have a marketing spend, if you have a subscriptions, maybe you have a subscription to Zillow or to a Canva for your is identifying what are your monthly fixed expenses. That's step number one, right? So it sounds like what you're saying is for someone that's nowhere, step one is figure out your expenses, which like I couldn't agree more, because that was us too. We were a checking account and we were like, I had no idea how much money I was spending, how much was coming, I was going. I saw the checking account. Even from a development standpoint, you may be making a lot more money than you think, because your psychology is, I'm used to having around 50 grand there, 10 grand, whatever the number is. You might be making a lot more and not even realize it, and then spend more and then be stuck at this 50 because you don't actually have the optics. So that's the fixed expense, right? Is whatever the thing is. And then take a bet. I think I'll do 5 rentals this month at an average price of $4,000. I think I'll do 2 sales this month for an average of, X amount of dollars over 6 months. And then look at that and then think about the variable costs associated with those listings. So I had to do photography. I had to do a lunch. I had to do a launch party or whatever. And then just put that in a simple spreadsheet and you're going to get some level of optics. The future would look like, either I think everyone should ultimately end up in QuickBooks someday, whenever they feel they're there. But in the beginning, it might just be a spreadsheet. It might be Mint. It might mint.com, which is really great. But ultimately, it's going to be overwhelming in the beginning. It's going to be hard in the beginning. And the only way you have failed is if you quit. Right. So I just want to bun that up a little bit, because this feels like going down memory lane. I remember when I first sat in the boardroom and they're like, okay, you got to create a budget and a budget of expense. And I'm like, how do I do that? No idea how to do that. It felt so overwhelming in the beginning. Okay. And for the advanced class, what should the advanced class be doing?
Well, so then the advanced class, if you're able to really forecast that out for a few months, then I think you really need to track, how well did you do against those expenses, right? Or against that budget that you set for yourself. Did you deliver on the top line? And was your projected view of your spending correct? And, the other thing to think about is, in order to grow your business, you typically need to invest, and you typically need to invest a little bit earlier, right? So you may have some opportunity to really identify opportunities to invest in your business to drive that top line higher and really be able to deliver more profits over time.
Right.
There's certainly an opportunity also to overlay a view of your market. What's the health of the market? What do we think? What do we think we can do based on based on the health of the market, the resources we have over the next 3, 6, 12 months. And if you want that result to be different, how can you invest in the business to make that result different? Or in some cases, you may feel like, hey, I'm spending too much and I'm not seeing enough return from it. Maybe I need to actually get smarter about my expenses, get a little bit more thoughtful so I can get more profits and sort of get control of the business.
Right.
Now, there's an opportunity to do scenario planning, like what you talked about, Eugene, saying, this is my base case, this is my downside case, this is my upside case. And those kinds of thought exercises are sort of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you sort of say, well, I don't, maybe on the downside case, you don't want that to happen, but it's always good to know that if it happens, what are you
That's
going to
right.
do, right? If things
That's
don't
right.
turn out the way you expect, I don't think the COVID thing was a bit dramatic, but let's just say
Yeah.
there's, a slowdown that you don't anticipate.
Right.
What are the opportunities to streamline costs a bit if you need to? Or more fun is to say, hey, what if things go like way better than I think? How would I capitalize on that? How would I
Right.
capitalize on that momentum to really use that as an opportunity to promote my brand, to promote, to really make sure that people know about all the great results that I'm generating, and really generate incremental pipeline that will take me into the next 6 months or into the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of those thought exercises and really laying out those cases can be really, really informative. And there's, I think, a typical, I think there are missed opportunities, I think, that probably happen more often than not because people
Mm-hmm.
may not be thinking big enough.
That's
And,
right.
as Robert's fond of saying, dream big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look, there's a lot of benefit to dreaming big, because what it will challenge you to do is to say, well, look, if this upside case is possible, I need to make this kind of investment now in
Right.
order to generate that kind of result
Right.
in the future. And can I do that? Can I afford that? And actually, it really may pay off. And I think that kind of visibility can help you get confidence to make investments that otherwise you may not have the confidence to make.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's like I would say financial literacy equals optics equals intention,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I can't. I mean, I've spent, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars and probably hundreds of thousands of dollars actually on coaching around this matter. And it was incredible. And I got hit with an IRS audit, and even there, like because I was able to understand these things in the back of all the hours and dollars spent learning this stuff. The truth is that when COVID hit, I was able to navigate that storm quite comfortably, because I was able to run these models or whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
for everybody out there, if you're nowhere today, if you're scenario A checking account, just start somewhere. It's a marathon. It's not about learning everything in a week. It's just start somewhere. But yeah, that last piece really hit home for me, because it's either you're spending, let me rephrase that, you're wasting tons of money that you don't know you're wasting, and or there's so much opportunity cost you're not aware of because you just don't have the optics.
Yes.
And so if I was trying to, if I was working out and I was trying to lose weight and I never had a scale, it's like, yeah, I might feel good, but like, how do I know that I lose 1 pound, that I lose 10 pounds, what's going on? And then taking that to the next level, how do I know, body mass or fat, whatever. You get the point I'm trying to make. So for everybody out there, like, I can't stress the importance of this part of the business. They say that, accounting and financials are the language of business. And so if you're an entrepreneur and in business for yourself, the sales are important, but that's not really the language of the business. The real language of the business is, here's my intention, here's what I want to do, here's what's going to cost, here's how I'm doing, rinse and repeat over and over again. So, Kristen, I want to let you go. It's 12:40. I'm sorry I kept you late. Any closing remarks, final thoughts? Thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is, especially today when things are nuts. Any final thoughts for any and all of our viewers? Gordon's out there. Gordon, we love you, buddy. He's watching us.
Yeah. Hey,
Uh,
Gordon.
any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, well, listen, I think Eugene, you said it really, really, really well. The visibility that you can give yourself when you're focused on the financial performance of your business. It doesn't have to be a downer. Like, I think sometimes people don't want to do it because they think like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm not going to like what I find. But
right.
I actually would submit to you the possibility that you may find some hidden surprises to the upside
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your ability to really generate growth going forward. But
Right.
just stepping back from the financial theme for a moment, I think we this is a time of incredible incredible uncertainty, no question about it, on a number of fronts, and really admire, the work that this industry has done. Of course, especially our Compass agents, but really all the agents out there. People are moving because this is critical. Having home, having the right place to call home for people and their families is so critically important. It is, in fact, essential. And so I want to thank all of you for everything that you've done to really, help our everybody, in our country really get through it as best as we all can.
Very cool. Thank you for that. Kristen, so much. Thank you so much. Your wisdom is amazing. Your high energy and beautiful smile. You've really made my day. I draw my energy from people. You've really made my day.
Well, that's very kind of you, Eugene. Thank you for having me. I've been so thrilled to be part of this.
Cool. Well, have a great day. Have a great week.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.